Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Zena Hayashi, the Asperger King, and today we're going to be reacting to the social shift women never saw coming, men just stopped showing up by Mind and Masculinity. Let's get into it.
There is an entire industry worth roughly $70 billion a year in the United States alone that is built on a single ancient assumption. The assumption is this: men will keep showing up to marry women, every wedding venue, every bridal magazine,
Not
every diamond
anymore,
retailer,
we're
every honeymoon
not.
resort, every wedding planner,
It's a
every
bad
florist,
deal.
photographer, caterer, dress designer, and officiant. The entire economic ecosystem of human pair bonding, and it is enormous, operates on the bedrock assumption that men will continue to do what men have done for thousands of years. They will propose, they will show up to the altar, they will buy the rings, they will pay for the parties, they will sign the contracts, they will play their
Not
role in the
anymore.
multi-billion-dollar machinery that turns male romantic intent into massive economic activity. What if I told you that this bedrock assumption is now cracking? Not theoretically, not in some future projection. Right now, in real time, in ways that the industries themselves are starting to panic about behind closed doors, while saying very little about it in public. Men, in unprecedented numbers, have stopped showing up. Not just emotionally, not just romantically, economically. They are not buying the engagement rings. They are not booking the venues. They are not signing the catering contracts. They are not paying for the honeymoons. They are not feeding the multi-billion-dollar machinery that has for up in the data, in the venues going bankrupt, in the bridal magazines shutting down, in the dating apps reporting revenue collapses, in the wedding industry that, despite headlines claiming recovery, is in the middle of one of the most significant demographic transformations in its history. Today, I am going to walk you through what is happening to the romance economy because men stopped showing up, the industries that are collapsing, the numbers that prove it, the chain reaction that is just beginning, and, most importantly, what it means that millions of individual men, by their quiet daily decisions to not participate in the romance industrial complex, are reshaping entire sectors of the global economy without ever organizing, coordinating, or announcing their actions. If you are one of those men, this video is going to show you something powerful, the weight of what you have collectively done. Sit back. This is the economic story behind the social shift that women, frankly, did not see coming. Let me begin with the foundation. The romance industry, meaning the wedding industry, the engagement industry, the dating industry, and all the satellite businesses connected to them, has been one of the most reliable engines of consumer spending for the last 60 years. In the United States alone, the wedding services industry generated approximately $66 billion in 2025. The industry is projected to reach $70.3 billion in 2026. Globally, the figure is much larger, easily exceeding $300 billion across all wedding, engagement, and ceremony-related spending. These are not small numbers. This is one of the most economically significant consumer sectors in the modern world, and it was built on a foundation that nobody, until recently, thought to question. The foundation is the male participant, the man who proposes, the man who pays for the ring, the man who shows up to the altar, the man who signs the marriage license, the man whose romantic intent triggers the entire downstream cascade of economic activity that the wedding industry depends on. Now look at what has actually happened to that foundation over the last 2 decades. According to IBIS World, wedding industry revenue in the United States fell at a compound annual rate of 4.1% over the past 5 years.
Wow.
The industry has been in a quiet but persistent decline. Even after the post-pandemic surge in delayed weddings, which artificially inflated numbers in 2022 and 2023, the trend has resumed its downward trajectory. The actual number of weddings in the United States has dropped from 2.07 million in 2022 to 2.01 million in 2025.
Wow,
that decline is going to accelerate dramatically over the next decade as the male disengagement trend matures into its full demographic expression.
And it's going to keep
IBIS World projects the US marriage rate to drop to 5.6 per 1,000 people in 2026. Historically low numbers that, 50 years ago, would have been considered statistically impossible. Globally, the picture is even more stark. According to Our World in Data, the global marriage rate has dropped from 8.2 per 1,000 people in 1970 to 4.9 per 1,000 in 2020, a 40% decline in just 50 years,
That's pretty
and every projection suggests the rate of decline is accelerating. These numbers may sound abstract, so let me translate them into industry terms. A 40% decline in marriage rates means a 40% decline in engagements. A 40% decline in engagements means a 40% decline in rings purchased. A 40% decline in rings means a 40% decline in receptions, dresses, honeymoons, photographers, planners, florists, and every other service that depends on a romantic event taking place. The industry has been quietly absorbing this decline for decades. They have masked it with rising per-wedding spending. The average US wedding cost climbed to $34,200 in 2025, which has kept overall revenue numbers from looking catastrophic. But the underlying demographic foundation is shrinking, and rising per-wedding spending cannot mask the demographic collapse forever. What we are watching, in slow motion, is one of the largest consumer sectors in the world losing its foundational customer, the man who shows up to participate in the institution that drives the entire industry. Let me walk you through the specific industries that are now starting to feel this collapse in their bottom lines. Because the wedding industry is not just one industry, it is a constellation of interconnected businesses, all of which depend on men showing up to participate in romance. Start with the diamond and engagement ring industry. For nearly a century, this industry has run on one of the most successful marketing campaigns in human history. The campaign convincing men that they should spend 3 months of their salary on an engagement ring as proof of their commitment.
That's a waste of money.
That campaign worked for generations.
Rings are
it is no longer
overpriced
working.
pieces of garbage.
Diamond sales have been under structural pressure for over a decade.
I don't like wearing rings.
Lab-grown diamonds have eroded prices. Younger generations are increasingly skeptical of the traditional engagement ring narrative. And most importantly, the simple math of fewer men proposing means fewer engagement rings being purchased, regardless of price point. The major diamond houses are pivoting toward fashion jewellery, women's self-purchasing and luxury non-engagement segments. Why? Because the engagement segment is no longer producing the volume it used to. The men who were supposed to keep showing up to buy these rings are not showing up at the historic rates, and the industry has been quietly restructuring to survive in a world where the historic male participant is fading. Move to wedding venues. The wedding venue industry, once one of the most reliable real estate categories in the country, is experiencing significant restructuring.
There's a new career and a new training that you can start with no previous experience.
While headline numbers look stable due to high per-event spending, the actual booking volume in many regions has dropped substantially. Venues that were fully booked 5 years out a decade ago are now finding their calendars half empty for the years ahead. Multiple venue operators are pivoting toward corporate events, private parties, and non-wedding gatherings to keep their businesses viable. This is a sign of an industry quietly preparing for a future where weddings will no longer be the primary revenue driver they have always been. Look at bridal media. The bridal magazine industry has been decimated. Brides Magazine, once a centerpiece of the wedding planning ecosystem, moved to digital only years ago, before reducing its operations even further. Modern Bride ceased publication years before that. The print publications that used to organize an entire industry around themselves have, one by one, faded into either irrelevance or digital ghost versions of their former selves. The wedding planning industry itself is restructuring. While Not Worldwide and Zola continue to dominate the digital wedding space, the underlying volume of weddings they serve is shrinking. The platforms are profitable not because the wedding market is growing, but because they have aggressively consolidated their grip on a market that is overall contracting. Move to dating apps. This is where the collapse is becoming most visible. Match Group, the parent company of Tinder, Hinge, Match.com and others, has been reporting consistent revenue pressures and user declines. Tinder has lost meaningful percentages of its male user base year over year. The company has been forced to launch reactive initiatives, internship revivals, gender rebalancing campaigns, pricing changes that all signal the same underlying reality. Men are leaving the platforms, and without men, the entire dating app business model breaks down.
Because it's a waste of time for most men to be on dating websites.
Resorts that built their business around honeymoon packages are pivoting towards solo travel, friend group travel, and non-romantic luxury experiences. Travel agencies that specialized in honeymoon planning have either diversified or shut down. The honeymoon, as a category, is becoming a smaller and smaller percentage of the global luxury travel market. Bridal dress retailers are consolidating. David's Bridal, the largest bridal retailer in the United States, has filed for bankruptcy more than once over the last several years, most recently restructuring its operations as the volume of bridal customers has shrunk. The standalone bridal boutique, once a fixture of every major city, has become an endangered species. Many have closed, others have pivoted towards special occasion dress markets to survive. Florists, photographers, caterers, the entire vendor ecosystem around weddings are feeling the same pressure. They are not all going out of business, but they are all adjusting their business models, diversifying their offerings, and quietly preparing for a future where weddings cannot be relied upon as the consistent revenue source they once were. Even the religious institutions that have historically presided over weddings are feeling the contraction. Churches that used to perform dozens of weddings per year are now performing only a handful.
Fuck the church.
Religious officiants who used to derive significant income from wedding services are increasingly diversifying or moving into other forms of ministry. This is not a single industry in decline. This is an entire ecosystem of interconnected industries, all of which depend on the same foundational input, men showing up to participate in romance, and all of which are now adjusting to a reality where that input is no longer guaranteed. Now let me explain why this matters beyond the romance industry itself. Because what we are watching is not just the contraction of wedding services, it is the early visible expression of a much larger economic restructuring that is going to play out over the next several decades. The wedding industry is the canary in the coal mine. It is the most visible, most measurable, and most economically concentrated indicator of male romantic participation. When that industry contracts, it is because something fundamental is changing about how men engage with women, with relationships, with the institution of marriage itself. And the wedding industry is not the only sector built on the assumption of male participation. Look at the broader economic infrastructure of pair bonding and family formation in modern society. The mortgage industry. Massive percentages of mortgage originations have historically been driven by newly married couples buying their first home. As marriage rates decline, the volume of dual-income newly married home purchases declines proportionally. Single purchaser mortgages, increasingly women buying alone, increasingly men buying alone, are restructuring the residential real estate market in ways that are only beginning to be quantified. The childcare industry. As marriage and birth rates decline, the childcare industry faces a structural shrinkage. Daycare centres are closing in many regions. School enrollments are dropping. The entire infrastructure built around the assumption of family formation is contracting alongside the formation rate itself. The auto industry. Family vehicles, minivans, SUVs designed for families with children, these segments are facing demographic headwinds. Fewer marriages mean fewer families. Fewer families mean different vehicle preferences. The auto industry is quietly adjusting to a world where single buyers are increasingly the primary consumer rather than the secondary one. The home goods industry, bridal registries, once a multi-billion-dollar feeder market for kitchenware, linens, china and furniture, are shrinking. Couples who do marry are increasingly older, already established, and not in need of the traditional registry cascade. Single buyers are purchasing differently. The entire wedding-driven home goods feeder has been contracting for over a decade. The greeting card industry, Hallmark and the broader greeting card industry have been in structural decline for years, and the wedding-related card sector, bridal showers, anniversaries, congratulations cards, is shrinking with the underlying events themselves. The list goes on. Almost every consumer sector that built itself around the assumption of marriage and family formation is now facing some version of this same demographic headwind. The economic infrastructure of mid-20th century family life is being quietly dismantled by the demographic decisions of 21st century men. This is what makes the wedding industry contraction so important. It is not just about weddings, it is about the early visible cracks in an entire economic edifice, an edifice that took 100 years to build on the foundation of male participation in family formation. And that is now showing structural stress because that participation is no longer reliable. Let me trace the chain reaction for you. Because the way this is unfolding, and the way it is going to keep unfolding, is something most people are not yet able to see clearly. It starts with individual men. Millions of them, in countries all over the world. making personal decisions about their own lives. They decide, for their own reasons, that they are not going to pursue marriage, they are not going to propose, they are not going to participate in the romance ecosystem at the levels their fathers and grandfathers did. These individual decisions look small from the outside. One man not getting married is not an economic event. It is a personal life choice. The decisions are made in private. They are not announced. They do not generate headlines, but multiply those individual decisions by the millions of men making them simultaneously across multiple countries year over year, with the trend accelerating each year. And the aggregate effect becomes one of the largest economic forces of the modern era. The first ripple: fewer weddings booked. Wedding planners notice, venues notice, vendors notice. Their order books shrink, their pipelines weaken. They start adjusting their forecasts, their staffing, their marketing. The second ripple: fewer engagements. Jewelers notice. Ring purchases drop. Diamond demand softens. The entire engagement-driven retail segment starts contracting. The third ripple: fewer young married couples buying homes. The starter home segment of the housing market becomes restructured. Single buyers, male and female, become a larger share of first-time home purchases.
Albion Online is a sandbox MMORPG in which you write your own story.
The home design, layout and marketing of starter homes adjusts. The fourth ripple: fewer children being born. Hospitals report fewer maternity admissions. Pediatric practices see smaller patient bases. The baby and child product industries, strollers, car seats, baby food, toys, kids' clothing, all face structural demand contractions over time. The fifth ripple: schools start losing enrollment. School districts consolidate. Educational publishers lose customers. The entire K-12 ecosystem faces demographic shrinkage. The sixth ripple: fewer workers entering the labour market 20 years later. Pension systems face strain. Social security programs face shortfalls. Entire workforce-dependent industries face demographic cliffs. The seventh ripple: political instability. Societies with falling birth rates and shrinking populations tend to face increased political volatility, increased immigration debates, increased intergenerational tensions, and increased pressure on national identity. These pressures, building over decades, reshape entire political systems. Every single one of these ripples is downstream of the decisions men are making individually about whether to participate in the romance and family formation ecosystem. This is what makes male disengagement, when viewed at scale, one of the most economically and politically consequential phenomena of the modern era. It does not look like an event. It does not look like a movement. It looks like millions of individual men just going about their lives, making their own decisions. But the aggregate effect is enormous, and the wedding industry is just the first place where the aggregate effect has become visible enough to put numbers on. Let me bring this back to the title of this video, because what we are describing is, fundamentally, a social shift that women, by every available indication, did not anticipate. The traditional cultural assumption, going back generations, was that men needed marriage more than women did. Men were assumed to be the ones who would always show up for the institution, because the institution served their needs, channeled their drives, organised their lives. Women, by contrast, were assumed to be the ones with the more complicated calculation about whether marriage actually served them in the modern era. What has happened over the last 20 years is the inverse of that assumption. Men have, increasingly, run the calculation and concluded that the modern institution of marriage does not serve them. Women, increasingly, are running their own calculation and finding that they want partnership. But the men they expected to find on the other side of that desire are not there at the rate everyone assumed they would be. This has generated a quiet but profound social shock that is now showing up in mainstream conversations everywhere. Women's media outlets that 10 years ago would have published content focused on female empowerment in dating are now publishing articles asking where the good men have gone. Women's podcasts are featuring increasingly serious discussions about the demographic shortage of marriageable men. Women's therapy sessions, by the testimony of multiple practitioners, are increasingly dominated by themes of disappointment about the available male pool. Fertility clinics are seeing unprecedented increases in single women choosing to have children through donor conception, a direct consequence of women not finding the male partners they expected to find. Egg freezing has gone from a niche service to a multi-billion-dollar industry, driven largely by women preparing for the possibility that the male partners they were assured would arrive may not arrive in time. The conversation among women about this, the one happening privately between friends, in therapy, in journals, has become impossible to suppress. The cultural assumption that men would always be there for the institution of marriage has, for many women in 2026, been replaced by the lived reality that the men they want to marry are simply not in the rooms where they expected to find them. This is the social shift that women did not see coming. Not because they should have seen it earlier, not because anyone failed to predict it, but because the cultural narrative for the last 60 years insisted that men would always be the eager participants in romance. That narrative was so strong, so institutionally reinforced, so consistently echoed across media and education, that the possibility of large-scale male withdrawal was almost unimaginable until it actually happened. Now it has happened, and the entire economic, social and personal infrastructure built on the previous assumption is having to adapt to a reality that nobody designed it to accommodate. Now let me speak directly to the men this video was made for, the ones who, by your own quiet decisions, are part of what we have been describing. You did not organize, you did not coordinate, you did not march under any banner, you did not sign a manifesto, you did not need to. You made a personal decision about your own life, quietly, calmly, without making any fuss about it. You decided, for your own reasons, based on your own analysis, in alignment with your own values. That the conventional romance and marriage path was not serving you, and so you stepped back from it. You may have thought at the time that your decision was a small one, that it only mattered to you, that it would have no impact beyond your own life. What you are seeing in this video is the truth that those individual decisions, multiplied across millions of men, have become one of the most consequential economic and social forces of our era. The $70 billion wedding industry is contracting because of what men like you have collectively decided. The dating apps are restructuring their business models because of what men like you have collectively decided. The bridal magazines are closing because of what men like you have collectively decided. The cultural conversation about masculinity is shifting because of what men like you have collectively decided. Your individual choice mattered more than you realized. Your individual choice was part of a tidal force that nobody saw coming. Your individual choice helped create one of the most significant demographic and economic shifts of the modern era. And here is what I want you to understand most clearly. You did not break anything. You did not destroy anything. You did not maliciously hurt any industry, any institution, any person. You simply declined to continue participating in something that no longer served your interests. That is one of the most basic rights any human being has. And the fact that millions of men exercise that right simultaneously, independently, without coordination, does not make it wrong. It makes it the natural result of millions of rational humans, given access to information and freedom, making decisions that aligned with their actual self-interest, rather than with the inherited assumptions of the surrounding culture. The industries that built themselves on the assumption that you would always be there. They did not consult you. They did not earn your continued participation. They assumed it. They took it as a given. And now they are learning, painfully and slowly, that nothing built on the unconsulted participation of an entire group of people is actually stable in the long run. You're not the villain of this story. You're the protagonist. You're the man who took back his agency. You are the man who declined to continue funding an ecosystem that was no longer giving you what you were paying for. You are the man whose personal sovereignty, multiplied across millions of others doing the same thing, became one of the most powerful economic forces of the 21st century. Hold this with the weight it deserves. What you have done, collectively, quietly, individually, is historic. The world will spend the next several decades adapting to it, and future generations will study what your generation did, almost as if it were a miracle of mass coordination, except that there was no coordination. There was just millions of men, each making the rational decision for himself, and the world being transformed by the aggregate weight of all of those personal decisions combined. Let me show you what is going to replace the contracting industries, because nothing in economics actually disappears. Money, demand, and human energy flow elsewhere. and what is flowing elsewhere right now is going to define the next economic era. The single male economy is rising. Industries built around serving the high-income, time-rich, financially deliberate single man are growing rapidly. Travel companies designed for solo male travelers. Luxury services pivoting toward unmarried professionals. Fitness, longevity, and health optimization industries targeting men who can spend on themselves without family obligations. These segments are exploding in value. The brotherhood economy is emerging. Communities, retreats, men's groups, mastermind organizations, philosophical training programs designed for men seeking deeper male connections outside of romantic partnership. This is a new and rapidly growing category, and it is filling a significant social function that traditional family structures used to provide. The self-development economy is booming. Books, courses, content, coaching focused on male self-mastery, physical, financial, mental, philosophical. The men who used to spend their resources on engagement rings and weddings are now spending them on themselves. The return on this spending, for many of these men, is significantly higher than the return they were getting on the old romance investments.
Indeed.
The single household economy is restructuring residential markets. Smaller homes, single-bedroom luxury apartments,
I have my
condos
own
designed
home,
for one person of substantial income.
and it's
These
awesome.
segments are growing in major cities globally. Developers and real estate firms that recognize this shift early are positioning themselves for one of the biggest real estate restructurings of the modern era. The custom experience economy is replacing the standardized wedding economy. Men with significant disposable income but no traditional family structure are channeling their resources into one-of-a-kind experiences, extended international travel, rare collecting hobbies, custom builds, deep philanthropy, mentorship programs they fund personally. The money is still moving. It is just moving
spend all
into
my
categories
money
the
on
wedding
my
industry
hobbies
never had access to. The new
and
childcare economy,
collections of
increasingly
things I
focused
like.
on single-parent families, donor-conceived children, and chosen family arrangements, is emerging to replace the old marriage-driven family economy. It looks different. It serves different family structures, and it is going to be one of the major economic stories of the next 20 years. All of this represents enormous economic opportunity. The contraction of one set of industries is producing the expansion of another set.
Yo, you know what we do at 6 a.m. in the middle of the woods? We chop down every single tree that is in our way. Need more?
The smart investors, entrepreneurs and builders of the next 20 years are positioning themselves not in the contracting romance industries, but in the expanding industries built around the new male economy and the new household structures that are replacing the old. The wedding industry contracts. The single male economy expands. The romance industrial complex shrinks. The self-mastery industrial complex grows. The standardized family economy declines. The custom life economy rises. This is the economic transformation that is unfolding right now. And the men who saw it first, the ones who walked away from the old economy before the new one had even been named, are perfectly positioned to be the primary beneficiaries of what is being built next. Let me bring this all home. Men just stopped showing up. Not in protest, not in anger, not in any dramatic way. They simply made personal decisions about their own lives, calmly, rationally, individually, and the aggregate effect of those personal decisions is now reshaping economies, industries, and entire social structures. The wedding industry is contracting. The dating app industry is restructuring. The bridal media industry has largely disappeared. The diamond industry is pivoting. The honeymoon industry is shrinking. The family formation economy that took a century to build is being quietly dismantled by the daily decisions of millions of men who concluded that the system, as constructed, was no longer worth their participation. This is the social shift that women did not see coming. And the reason they did not see it coming is not because they were inattentive. It is because the cultural narrative for the last 60 years insisted that men would always be the eager participants. That narrative was so deeply embedded in every institution, every media outlet, every educational system, that the possibility of large-scale male economic withdrawal was almost unimaginable until it had already happened. It has happened. The $70 billion wedding industry is grappling with it. The multi-billion-dollar dating app industry is grappling with it. The trillions of dollars of downstream consumer activity that depended on traditional family formation are grappling with it. And the men who made this happen? They did not even need to attend a meeting. They just lived their lives. They made their decisions. They built their own paths. And the aggregate weight of all of those individual sovereignties created one of the most consequential economic and social transformations of our time. Your individual decision mattered. Your individual choice mattered. Your individual sovereignty mattered. And the world is now being remade, quietly, structurally,
Men's lives
by
matter.
the millions of men who chose, like you, to step back from a system that no longer served them. This is not the end of romance. This is not the end of love. This is not the end of male engagement with women, family, or partnership. This is the end of a particular configuration of romance, love, and partnership that was built without men's input and maintained without men's consent. And what is being built next will be very different, because this time men have the leverage, they have the absence, they have the silence, they have the unspent dollars, and nothing in the new economy is going to be designed without their willing participation. That is the social shift. That is the economic shift.
Good.
That is the historic moment we are part of. And the men who made it happen by their quiet, individual, unannounced decisions are exactly the men who are now positioned to thrive in whatever comes next. If this video gave you the economic perspective on what your generation of men has collectively done, if it helped you see the weight of your individual decision in the larger context of an industry collapse you helped create, then I need you to do 3 things right now. First, drop a comment below. Tell me what industry you have watched contract in your own life. Tell me where you have seen the romance economy struggling. Tell me what you have personally stopped participating in. Let the other men watching this know the scale of what your generation has collectively pulled off. Quietly, without coordination, without permission, simply by making personal decisions that aligned with your own self-interest. Second, if this video opened your eyes to the bigger picture, smash that like button right now. Not for me, for the algorithm. So this message reaches every man who needs to see the economic weight of what his individual decision actually meant. Every man who needs to understand that his quiet withdrawal from the dating market was not a small thing. It was part of one of the largest economic transformations of the modern era. Third, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We are building a community of men who think with depth, who understand the larger context of their lives, and who are committed to navigating the next decade with strategic clarity. A community for the men who saw it first. A community for the men who are positioned to thrive in whatever economy emerges next. A community for the men who refuse to live without understanding the world they are reshaping. Every week I drop content like this. Content that connects your individual life to the larger economic and social forces unfolding around you. If you stay with me, I promise, your understanding of yourself, your generation, and your strategic position in the world to come will only sharpen with every video. Until next time, keep building. Keep choosing yourself. Keep walking the path. The industries you walked away from did not deserve your continued participation.
Indeed.
The industries that are being built next will earn your participation,
Yes,
or fail
they will.
without it. You have the leverage. Use it wisely. Peace.
I will.
And I forgot my...
Well, that's it for today's videos, folks. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before Christmas. Thank you everyone who's already subscribed to my channel, as it helps me get closer to my goal of making YouTube into a profitable career for myself. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. Peace out. See you in the next video. Bye.